So to honor your time and Katie's time, oh shoot, no, hey, did you know that the admit and the remove button are right next to each other when you have somebody in the waiting room? And you got to be really careful which one your cursor goes on when you're using a laptop. I almost totally booted somebody. That would have been embarrassing. As I keep an eye on it, I do want to welcome you all here. I am going to mute you all right now, but I will allow you to unmute yourselves. Katie, did you unmute yourself?
I did.
Thank you. My name is Tim Markle. I am the director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Health Care Needs. We cover 14 counties in southern and southwest Wisconsin, and we're based out of the Waisman Center. We are there to help families and professionals find resources they need and support they need, and find some leadership skills and advocacy skills along the way. Most of all, we just want to help parents to navigate the system of care, and we want to help the system of care to be responsive to the parents. I just made that up, so if you like it, put it in the chat box, and I'll start it as a new tagline. We are starting something new today. Thanks to everybody having to be at home, is talking to my friend Katie Berg, we decided that we should start off with starting out as showing up for kids. Conversations for showing up for kids is that we have plenty of opportunities for webinars, and we could do a lot of online learning, but we'd like to find a space to talk and to have a conversation around some of those topics that are important to family members like myself. I am the parent of a child with autism, and I noticed from the call that I know we have a number of parents are in the call as well. I would like to remind you a couple of things. We are being recorded. We are not offering any medical advice. We are not offering any legal advice. We are not offering any educational advice. We are holding a conversation. Please be aware that as it is being recorded, there is the opportunity for other people to hear this afterwards, which means you probably do not want to divulge any personal health information unless you want everybody in the world to know about it. That's the world that we live in. So that's what I have for now. If you could do me a favor, if you haven't put your name and information in the chat box, such as if you're a parent or working with an organization today, that's fine. We're going to start off, going to talk to Katie for a little while here, and then we're going to unmute people and open you all up, let you ask Katie questions, and have ourselves this little bit of a conversation. I'll be trying to keep an eye on the chat box as well, but I do not have two coworkers with me to manage my chat and waiting room, so I'm going to do it all myself. But I'm really excited to have Katie here today. Katie is with the Supporting Neurodiverse Students Grant, as well as working out of CYSHCN. She has been very involved in the community practice on autism spectrum disorder and other developmental disabilities, which I've really got to know her from. And when I first started to think about, who would I want to talk to? Well, I automatically thought about neurodiverse students, which made me think about Katie, because I know that it's challenging enough for our families right now to have their students home and be a parent and a teaching coach. But then to add on to it, our students that have some neurodiversity that don't fit into what the school wants as the norm. And so they could give out everything that neurotypical kids maybe will be able to succeed at. Well, that's not my son. It was not my son when he was in school. So what are we going to do? So I thought I'd talk to Katie first. And first of all, I'd just like to say, have you been talking to any families, Katie? Have you been able to get in touch with them?
Yeah, so there's been a couple different parents who have reached out to me, and then also through some of the different calls I've been on. And it really seems like one of the biggest pieces that's coming down is the pressure, right? So we've got a lot of pressure for the education piece to get done. And what I'm finding from a lot of the parents that I've spoken to is that their child can't show up sitting in front of a computer going through a lesson. And they're struggling to be able to meet the demands or the the perceived demands, or sometimes what looks very much like a very clear demand of some of the educational needs that are coming through. And also wanting to show up to have their student not regress or not have them fall apart with the progression within school. And so one of my colleagues who works up in Ashland said, she goes, I have to keep remembering this is a health crisis, not an educational crisis, right? And so when I think about those families and some of the challenges, and most of the challenges are actually trying to find a routine that works, trying to find, especially when the computer is not a learning tool, but is a regulation tool, or sometimes an overwhelming sensory tool. So I had 2 parents that had that kind of, they're like, I can't put them in front of the computer because then, right, it's something totally different. I think some of the ways that we're trying to approach through the virtual learning piece, right, because some of the other alternative ways that people are showing up are pretty cool, but the virtual one seems to be the biggest one. And also, home is the safe place for a lot of our students who are showing up near, whether it's autism or whether it's like trauma or whether what, right, and trying to do school, which can be a highly stressful thing, and then having a caretaker do it is too much, and is causing not only stress in a very, very stressful time, but from one parent, it was causing a lot of physical interactions, and I keep going back to that. It's a health crisis, not an education crisis. We show up the best we can, right?
Yep. And I love that phrase when you told it to me the first time, because I will get caught up with it being whatever the crisis is with whomever I'm talking to. And so a lot of the conversations I've had have been with parents and have been about education. And so it's just like, we have this education crisis going on and our kids aren't, and maybe our kids aren't being educated. Maybe they are falling a bit behind. Maybe things aren't going as well as they should. But overall, what we are dealing with is a public health crisis. We are dealing with a worldwide pandemic. And it's something we've never dealt with before. Our kids haven't dealt with before. We haven't dealt with before. And to think that we, our kids, or our teachers are going to get it right the first time, the third time, the fifth time, can be a heck of a lot of pressure to put on ourselves, our kids, and our teachers. And so given that sense that this is bigger, we need to keep it in focus, look outward a bit more than just inward. But then again, go ahead. Having
some of that self-compassion.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Greg, I'm going to totally blank on his name, Greg from DPI. He's in the SSPW section.
Way to throw out a bunch of acronyms. I love professionals.
Right? You
Greg,
have,
DPI with SSPWSQR.
Student services, like your psych, your counselors, and your social workers, like that fun group at DPI.
Okay.
Greg was talking about self-compassion. That one of the things during this that we need to have, no matter who you are, is you want to show up so good, and you want to make this work.
Yes.
Like, we are traumatized too. Like we're going through this. So you have to have self-compassion for yourself and be mindful of that. Which it wasn't a conversation I had with a parent, but I had with a teacher who was like, I've had a lot of teachers in tears because they want to do anything they can and it's for families, which is really exciting. But individual conversations I've had haven't been about how do I get XYZ this done to get this grade. It has had to be, I don't know how to show up for this parent. We can't get a hold of them. Okay, we know that their student struggles just with typical processing through things, and we want to show up for them. So that's been really cool. It's been very hard. It's been uplifting to see how people have been showing up for other people. But that self-compassion piece, I think we have to keep in mind. No matter if you're educator, family member, support member, wherever you're coming from.
So we keep that self-compassion piece in mind. Give ourselves a little bit of a breathing room. Give those people that are trying stuff for the first time a little bit of breathing room. Remember that it's much bigger than it appears. That we deal with what's in front of us, but there are much bigger things that are going on around us. We have to keep that global view in mind. But the parents that you have been talking to, like you're just like, the computer, he just gets our computer and it's, can't do it. Or the computer has always been where he's gone to for his quiet time, for his break from work. And now it's where he's spending his time for the schoolwork. Have you been able to offer them some suggestions or any insights that you've picked up?
So one thing is to voice, if you can, and you feel comfortable enough, where you're at, where your family's at, and being able to access, right? So whether that I can't even get him to the computer, right? So the educator knows where suggestions or a path can be. So if they're going to come in with, like most of the educators are talking, come up with this path, right? This path in mind. I've been trying to encourage showing up and saying, hey, before you give anybody a path, where are you at, what's going on, and how can I help? And what is the path you see? So as a family member, if you can say, a doable path would be this. This is what I like to see, right? I know his IEP, right? He's my son. I have it in my head. I don't see all of this happening because it's not but right. What do we need out of this right now? I really don't want him to lose the letters he gained, or I don't want him to lose the relationships that he has with you guys. I've had parents who are like, I don't care, academics, it's going to be what it is, right? But I can't lose this connection that he has with you guys because it keeps him calm. Some of our educators are some of our closest tied relationship kids,
Yes.
Like they're their people, the aides, everybody, I can remember in my school, if I was doing this, if I was in the classroom, which is what I try to do when I think about that, like if I was in my classroom, let's just look at I had a kid who's the strongest connection with the custodian, right? So how do I get that engineer on a Zoom with me?
Yes.
Or just a Zoom with the kid? Like, the relationships matter, and you have to maintain those relationships. So at the base, that being as an educator, if you're an educator, thinking about how do I approach saying, how can I show up for you? Where are we at? What's the path? Or what would you see out of this? I have some ideas, but we're here to show up for you in your child. And then how do we maintain those relationships? And if that's all we get done is showing up for families and maintaining relationships, I would say that's a pretty good start during a health crisis. How much further we get from that would be beautiful. It's icing on the cake. But if you don't have, in my opinion, if you do not have that relationship piece to be able to maintain, either just as educator to parent too, not just kid to the people he's missing. That's key. And that's really
interesting to me because, I'll go to, I would go to conferences and everything, a lot of education conferences, are really big and strong on this, you may be that adult figure that child looks up to. You may be that one that they connect with. You may be that one that makes a difference in their life, and it only takes one. And as we've gotten more and more into this crisis, I think we're starting to realize the value of those relationships more. But it seems to me the initial message that went out to parents was, here's the academic stuff that your kid needs to learn to stay on track so we can finish the academic year. And we've forgotten about that relationships. We've forgotten about those people that are interacting casually with our children during the day, whether it's the school psychologist, the speech language pathologist, the assistant principal, the principal. If there was a touch point, a touch person that kid had during the day that was not their instructor, how are they getting that relationship now? And the fact is, I think they need it more now. And so I totally agree with you, is that I think relationships matter more now, especially with the neurodiverse kids than ever before.
And thinking about that piece, I think it's very district-based, that pressure. And I know from the DPI standpoint, it's very much meet family where it's at. And if you look national-wise, right, you look at the Counts for Exceptional Children, it's very much meet families where they're at, right? And so the messaging's out there, but I think the stress of feeling, right, is I got to show up, and I got to show up the way I would. And so here we go. Which when we think about relationships, some of the really cool things that I've seen I know that there was one district that actually had all their teachers getting cards. Actually, I think it's 2 districts now. I've heard one through a personal friend and one through a teacher that either district did it. And the kids all came out on their lawn and had signs for the teachers, and the teachers all drove by in a caravan, like the birthday caravans. That was a pretty cool one. I had an early childhood teacher tell me that they send food home. Their district had options, not just if you were free or reduced, but that lunch would be delivered to your house. I was like, oh, I want to be in your town. But you had to sign up for it. So she encouraged all of her families to sign up for it. And the teachers can send things, because they're not doing virtual, they can send things through this delivery. And so she crocheted little hearts and notes, and then she was sending home the learning materials that way, and then information of how, if they wanted to Skype on their own or virtual platform on their own, how to do it with her, since it wasn't something that the district was doing. So there's lots of reach outs, and if you feel you're not getting reached out to, I feel like you should, you can reach out to your teacher and go, hey, I just want to touch base. Like, I'd love to have a conversation. How could that conversation look? And there is a lot of support out there in trying in the education world to help educators understand how to do that in a accessible way, in different layers, not just you have to know how to use Google Hangout or you have to know how to use Zoom, right? I have seen multiple educators use multiple systems to meet parents where they're at, to be able to have the conversation. So that's been really promising. But I was kind of thinking about what was the advice, to the parents. And I always go back to systems, right? What systems worked at school? And if you wanted to try to, so let's say you're at the point where your child can engage. It's not about the relationship piece. We're good. We got that going, and you're actually looking to engage in learning. The one thing I hear myself saying a lot is, what was the system used at school? How was the learning set up? How do we recreate the system, not the learning? Again, if I was thinking about, and usually this is what I do, I talk out my classroom. I'm like, okay, so if I had to plan that out, okay, I used to have all, probably 4 to 8 kids at my little kidney table, right? And I used to have them all have something that interests them while I worked individually. And I went, choo, choo, choo. I tried, because I came from ABA, that was my initial, so I was trying to do individual instruction in my classroom when I first started. It was crazy.
Individual instruction, 6 on 1. Good.
Yes,
Good.
6 to 8, something like that.
Yep.
Right? So I have to keep all entertained. But so I was thinking, okay, so what was that kid experiencing? That kid was experiencing bursts of teaching with either relationship building, just interaction, and or special interest occupier, right? So an independent occupier, and then relationship building, and a small bit of academics back to independent occupier, right? And so that was the system. So how can we recreate that system in some way so that the patterns that they're used to and the patterns they see when you get out your phonemic awareness lesson, or you get out your vocab, whatever, right? Maybe your math. The pattern that they're living within is the same, so they can feel a little bit safer with that. So that's probably one of the other things that I've been talking with people with the most, is just explain your system to me, and let's see how we can get something close to it. And it might just be breaking. It's not like they're going to put them at a kiddie table and they're going to make, it's what was the system's purpose? What was the pattern in it? And how do we get to something that looks like that pattern?
And that goes back to what you were talking about before, that it's going to take an extra step of communication.
Yeah.
Of not just, how is my kid doing today? How is he engaged today? But how did you engage my kid today? How did you help my child learn? What is it that you have done as an educator that is helping my child get this important information through, so that I can replicate what you are helping with at home? And if the teacher comes back and says, then that's a different conversation. That's a conversation of, okay, let me tell you about my kid and what I'm seeing at home and how he learns. And this is how I would recommend. We may end up with, if we get back into school in the fall, it may be interesting to find the insights that parents have of children with special health care needs that they can then give to their teachers about how best their child learned. and how they stayed occupied and what interested them. It could be a very different welcome back to school. It could be a welcome back to school. This is what we did and it worked really, really well. How can you then replicate that into your classroom?
And Tim, I think that's really cool. There's a lot of people on here, educator and parents, who are finding out new modes that their kids do. You know, and we're talking about when it's failing kind of here, but there are so many kids. This is working out really, really well. I was talking to a teacher yesterday who started completely bawling. Like, because she is just, I mean, she's got 3 kids that she's trying to navigate that. They can't, and then she's trying to do, she's a high school teacher, and she is a teacher who, all the students on her caseload enter into special education through the EBD like criteria. And so this kind of change in that, when you're showing up with factors that would qualify you within emotional behavioral disability, this is going to affect you big time, right? And she said and I want to tell this story because it's so cool. This high school student that she has been struggling with, he's a junior, for so long. She can't ever get him to engage. It's usually a chair or running out of the room. He basically says he doesn't need school because he's going to have his own business. And he's already created this lovely lawn business, which I told him, like, work with that. That works really well. But through this, she said, you know what? You can mute your camera and you can mute yourself. You don't have, I just want you there. Right? He has participated more in the last month than he has in the last 2 years with her. And on subjects that she was like, this is going to be so even extra hard. He's like in, because he has choice to be able to control so much within it. And she was looking at, how do I move this forward? How do I keep that control for him so he can access those pieces? And so she's already reaching out to his other high school teachers and the teachers for next year. I was like, oh my God. Like, we're
That's
learning.
Great.
Yeah. So it's cool because I think also the relationship piece, some of our teachers, all they're doing is just talking to parents. The kids aren't able to access coming to the virtual in the way that everybody else is.
Right.
Navigating through. So they're taking the time, and it's almost, like one teacher's like, all I'm doing is consulting with the parent. I'm like, relationship building and understanding of child, that seems like some really good IEP information that you're building right there. Mm-hmm. And what great value. And if you're finding so much value in that, how are you going to keep that going when we have more than just the forced talking, right? If you know this is working, that, hey, I can ask you what's going on and talk virtually and gather some information, how are we going to use that moving forward? And get to know each other better. Because sometimes I swear we show up either for a conference or an IEP and everybody's like, oh, like, I don't, right? You're nervous, and you can always feel it from the parents. But educators are nervous too because they don't want to fail you. They don't want to fail your kid, right? Or something's been miscommunicated, and they think that you're angry, or there's all this stuff because we don't talk enough. We don't spend that time building the relationship. So when we're in a intense meeting like an IEP, we can understand that we're there all together to meet a goal that's student driven and is for that kid.
Yeah.
So I think this might actually open up more comfortableness with having better conversations with our other team members.
I hope so, because I mean, that's one of the keys to successful engagement in schools, is the parents having that trusted source at the school that they can talk to, is that there's someone who is not going to belittle them, someone who's not going to tell them they're wrong, someone who's going to listen to what they are saying and take it in a way that is helpful, not in a defensive way. And on the other hand, that the parent is open to the teacher's ideas and what the teacher knows and what the teacher has learned. And so there's more of that give and take, which comes from, as you were saying, comes from those conversations, comes from relationship building.
The more we talk, the better we get at that.
Exactly. Any other strategies that you found families to have found success for at-home learning?
I think I had one parent talk about how they were thinking about when I mentioned like recreating the systems that were in school, she was like, well, we were putting it into our systems. And I'm like, well, that's, yes, exactly. Go into your system. It's just like that idea of that naturalistic environment. You enter into the child's world, right? So if home is home, let's keep it home. you know, asking like, what are things that I could, this is what I do on a regular basis with my son. Da, 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 da. It's something we both enjoy together. Could you see anything educationally I could throw into that interaction? And so working on the systems either way, either trying to recreate a system that they're used to within education or living within the ones you have within your family and not making it about education. Not like, here we go, we're doing our 20 minutes of reading, right? It's we're reading and we're doing, you know, like I'm creating a literacy rich environment and boosting up what's going on in my household to get more of it there. But within the systems we have, the ones that we're good at, the ones the kid feels safe in. So I know I realize it just gave the same strategy first, but flipping it to the other side, that you can put education and things that you want to maintain. Because do I really true a lot of growth? I think a lot of growth is happening right now, especially for our kids who if their social emotional need is that regulatory piece. Mm-hmm. We're not accessing a lot right now. So we're best for trying to maintain or get a child feeling safe because they can't leave their house, right? How many of us are struggling with that? So looking at your system, showing up where the kid is at and having some self-compassion that we're not meeting some astronomical goal, that we meet kids where they're at, we show up for them the best we can in the way that we can show up and try to help each other through that and making sure that we're maintaining relationships so that we can get new ideas, or we can just hear like, wow, that was really cool. I like that. Like, I like that. Maybe I'll use that with my kids, right?
And I love, again, going back to relationship, is remembering that no matter if I am being called on to coach, aid my kids' education, I am their parent first. I unconditionally love them and accept them, and I want the best for them, and I want them to succeed. And that's my role. That is who I am, first and foremost, as a parent. And so remembering that relationship first. Now, before we open up for conversations, I do have a note that you want to say something about documentation.
Oh, I did.
I don't know what, but I remember something about documentation.
I think in the email, I put like, there's probably. Like,
what do you mean? Like, I don't want to write anything else down, man. I'm already overwhelmed. So what do you want me to document?
So not on the parent side. Although, you know, you're a team member too, man. You can take that as much as you want to bring to forth, right? Which actually is really helpful. But definitely, you know, like not something I would put on somebody right now. But for educators, definitely thinking about we're going through these things differently, and you know, like some of the language in the law is to the best extent possible, right? Prove what your best extent possible is. Document, right? And that could be super simple. You know, like just jotting down, I made contact with a family member today, and they said helped out the best, right? This is where their kid's at, right? This is where. On the other hand, or on the other piece, family, I really encourage family members to say, I am overwhelmed by what you're doing, how much you're asking, and what is being required, right? I have heard multiple educators say that parents have told them that, and they have found a way to back off. Right? Even within some of the systems that are forcing them to put out all of this stuff. So be a voice, right? And then the educator can go, parents said, your kid can't access, so we're moving to this amount, because that's the greatest extent possible right now. We offered, it was too big, we need to back up, here's where we're at, because we're showing up for kid. So when I talk about document, we got to document those attempts and those changes, because things are going to look different, and I can't predict what it's going to look forward within. I love that they protected IDEA and that none of that was changed, but who knows? When you document, you have a voice, right? You have a voice to say, on this date we did this, it adjusted to this, family member said this, so we adjusted to this, right? So that we move forward knowing that we were doing the best we could and having the proof. So I love that educators are doing great things across the state, and families are surviving the best they can, right? But the more documentation on how we have that done, not only gives us information moving forward if there's stuff we're learning, but also kind of shows us that, hey, we are looking at that protective piece, and there is a law factor within kids who have an IEP, and so we respect that, and we're gonna not just throw it out the window, right? Relationships matter. I shouldn't say that. In my mind, relationship mattered more. I'm not but like I don't think they would say that either. I think they would say relationships
I
matter.
think they do. Yes.
I think Carolyn Stanford, I think that's one of her messages. We show up
Yes.
first. So I do feel good saying that out loud. But there's a legal part. So when you document, we're doing good, and we can use that document for a purpose, not just be like, well, she told me to document. No, it's got a reason, and we can learn from it and move forward and use it for a purpose.
No, I'm just writing stuff down because you told me to.
Yeah.
Well, why'd you take that? No, Katie told me to. Katie told me to write it down, so I wrote it down. I don't know why I wrote it down, but Katie said to. But no, that does make sense. What I would like to do is I would like to unmute all the phones, which means then you can, which is very scary, but I have the power to unmute all. I have no idea exactly what happens when I do that. But yeah, then everybody's phones all of a sudden come off. So you probably want to then mute yourselves. And if you want to say something, then raise your hand and I will, or you know what, I may just mute everybody again. Okay, I'm just muting everybody again. Sorry, y'all didn't earn the unmute. No, I'm kidding. But if you would like to join the conversation, unmute your phone, raise your hand, and I'll unmute your phone. I think that'll work. So yeah, raise your hand and I can unmute you so that you can ask Katie a question, you can ask me a question, you can make a statement. This is your time to join the conversation.
We did have somebody already comment that they were also hearing that parents are frustrated.
Okay.
So I think that's a pretty common thing that a lot of us are hearing. Frustration.
Okay. Yes, Debbie.
Do you think there will be more opportunities for ESY because we know that kids probably aren't making progress or that they're not growing and they're more likely regressing? Because that's been asked of me a few times.
I think that's going to be very, very district-based. So
what? I'm sorry.
Very district-based. So when you think about the questions you ask yourself for ESY, and I'm not an ESY expert, but and I know there are things coming out from DPI, like the DPI COVID page is pretty extensive, and there is a special education line within it that you can go in there. They have a fact sheet that's getting pretty long, but that's because they're addressing things as they're coming up. And I know ESY is a hot topic.
For those, just really quick, for those who may not know what ESY is, thank you.
Extended school year. So that's the process that we think about when a child would show up in the summer break or the break between the completion of one school year to the next one would cause so much regression that the team decides that intermediate like instruction is required to maintain what was gained within the school year. That's a very broad, right? There's a lot of things that go with it. But so when we're thinking about extended school year, districts are deciding how they get through that. So if you want to see, as the guidance comes out for DPI, you definitely can, but it will be district-based what is going on. I know the one ESY conversation I've had, they are looking to go virtual. So a large district is just doing what they're continuing to do and maintaining it that way. I haven't heard whether or not you'll see more kids in ESY because of this or not, because when we look at the general population loss, like what's different for the student, right? Because when we think about that, it's thinking about individuals and what's being offered to access, engage, and progress in the general curriculum or the alternate curriculum, right? Or all standards.
And it goes back to the fact too that we're in this great big horribly feeling unknown. We don't know what we can think what the regression is going to look like, and we can calculate it just like all the models. We can calculate this, but we don't know. We don't know how the children are going to respond to this when summer comes. We're in this huge unknown, and so what you're going to see is what we're seeing with a lot of other things. We're going to have the opportunity that different districts will do it different ways, and then we'll be in a much better shape next year. If this would ever have to happen again, at least we'll have some sort of data and some knowledge about how the kids responded. Whereas right now, we just don't know what's going to happen at the end of the school year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that, okay, what would your advice be when trying to tell the teacher that 100% of the assignments posted for the class to do are 100% of assignments my child does not understand. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, sorry, that was privately. Sorry, I don't know if I wasn't supposed to read that out. But that's a really good question.
Yeah, just don't read out who sent it.
She said that's okay. She said
Okay.
okay.
Okay. No, that's good. Feel free. That way I don't have to do nothing in the chat. Okay, just chat with Katie.
Yeah.
That works for me.
When I think about what's being put out, so if the assignments, so I'm gonna think about one of the parents I was talking to, that their son has some major dysgraphia, writing disability, writing disability, and then the layers of social that cause the comprehension piece to be used. And they're just getting these blanket writing assignments, right? Just his classes, his 6th grade class. And she's like, I don't know how to move forward and trying to help him navigate this, right? I don't have the skill sets to be able to meet him where he's at to scaffold the assignments that are being sent out. What we talked about was how we could voice that to the teacher in a way that could meet the teacher where they're at. Which seems really kind of convoluted, but our teachers are also going through a major crisis too. Yes. And I mean, I'm on a lot of calls with a lot of crying teachers trying to figure this out. So finding the language to voice that concern, saying, there is this divergent piece here. Like, here's the assignment that was given, but the skill set that my son is showing up with right now is not accessible to that. So what would be my way forward? What would be your suggestion on how to complete that, or to get him to be able to move forward in that? What would be, I can see the assignment you have out there and I can understand that assignment, but I need to know where I need to meet my kid at so that we can do whatever part of that assignment we can do. So it's almost like, how do you phrase back the need? Because I can guarantee you, especially for students who do not have really significant needs, the teacher's access of processing through each kid to remember, that's right, he's got a writing goal and it's this and that, is hard right now. And there's a lot of teachers totally showing up and using paper to try to make sure they're doing it. But I can't guarantee every teacher is accessing that instantly. And so sometimes it just goes, it takes like a message back going, okay, great assignment. Where do I start with my kid? Because we know my kid has these differences. Can you tell me where I should start with my students so he can access whatever he's going to access within this, and pop that into their head so they can be like, oh, that's right, a graphic organizer. Let's go back to this.
And I think also, Katie, that one of those things to think about is that a time to engage the teacher in a conversation about, okay, I'm getting these assignments and they look really discrete. Could you tell me what the goal is? Yeah. What is it that you want my kid to be at the end of all this? Because maybe I can help you find a way to get there without this 20-point checklist. But if I don't know where we're going, what the intention of this assignment is, then I can't give you any insights into how my kid can get there.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to phrase it, right? Because I think sometimes teachers do assume you understand the goal.
Right.
I put that out there. I probably did. I did with all the support staff in my room. I would start doing something. I'm like, well, I don't understand why they're not just getting up and moving. Never said, oh, I was really hoping to have this be a really solid, positive social interaction. So we need to all be socially interacting. So could you join us? Versus, it's hard. You're layering a lot of stuff, and this time access is going to be hard for anybody to hold it all in their head. So it's finding really relationship building ways, just like what Tim was the way he was describing things. That was a really good one too, of how to get the need that was missed heard and addressed. So yeah, that was a really good question.
Oh, well done. Any other questions coming through your chat? I'm not getting any through the main chat again. We do have some time if you would like to unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment. We would love to have this be, okay, we wouldn't love it. We designed this in our brains that it would be a conversation. And so we really do want to hear not just questions, but insights because we don't have all the answers. And so if you have something that's been working for your kid and showing up with your kid at home, we would love to be able to share that. with others as
With
well.
your parents. If you're an educator and you found something to work with the people that you're interacting with and your families. We also discussed that me and Tim could talk the whole time because we're talkers, but.
Right, so we're trying not to just have a conversation on absolutely nothing relevant while you all are joining us well, in my case, my living room. And I don't know what room you're in, Katie, I don't need to know. But
That's why I have the green screen. No.
Your house, I know, I'm so jealous of your green screen.
I am very lucky I actually have a physical, because I work from home a lot, so I have a physical.
That is just amazing. So I guess I will make a last call for any questions or comments. And I'll do the closing spiel. Please feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand. Yeah, unmute and scream and we'll acknowledge you. It'll be okay. You're among friends.
Really quick, Tim, is I'm going to put my email in the chat box.
Thank you.
Because part of what I do is showing up for the people in our state, right? That I'm part of the grant system, and coaching and support is it's like the state pays for a consultant, if you want to put it really simply, right? You know, like we have all these private consultants that go into districts. Well, the state pays for one for you guys. So feel free at any time to email me. We'll have a chat. I'll probably set up a Zoom and we'll work out whatever you need to work out. So know that I'm here for you and that's available to you.
And I'm going to try to, hopefully you were able to enter your names into the chat box because I know then that I will have your email from when you registered. I will be sending out a short evaluation. In total disclosure, I will send it out as soon as I design it. So I know I'm supposed to evaluate stuff. So I am going to ask at least a couple questions of you, especially as this was the first one. So be looking for that. I will also include Katie's email in that. And if she comes up with any other great ideas or places to send parents and educators to, we'll include that in the email as well. So look for that in about a day or two. I really do want to thank you all for joining us today as we talk about how we're showing up for kids. Today we're talking education. We are going to go ahead and next week we will be doing something. So this was an educator's perspective, our at-home learning and strategies for starting with students and engaging in instruction. And then next week, we're going to be an hour earlier. We're going to have to start at noon, but next Wednesday, May 13th, from 12 to 12:45, we're going to be talking virtual special education, what we can learn from a virtual school's experiences. I'll be talking with Andrea Schmidt, the 504 coordinator for WEVA, and Amanda Medke, the lead special education teacher for WEVA. WEVA is the Wisconsin Virtual Academy. It's a K-12 powered school based in McFarland. So we want to hear from people that have been doing this virtual special education for a while and see if they have anything that the rest of us can learn. So I hope you could join us next Wednesday at noon. Final thoughts, Katie?
No, just be compassionate with yourself and those you support. Because I know we got some people who support people too. It's a health crisis, not an education crisis.
Yeah, let's keep that in mind. Let's be self-compassionate, compassionate of each other. Thank you all again very much. We'll meet again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.